Very festive day, if you didn't know. This is the first day of Sweet Potato Awareness Month. And today is also National Calzone Day. It's National Go Cook for Your Pets Day, and it's World Vegan Day. Now, why do I mention all these culinary holidays? Because where would all these holidays be without the kitchen? Kitchen interiors are much more sophisticated than in the past, both in style and technology. The connected ecosystem has improved product longevity through software updates and expanded functionality. So today, we're going to talk about how appliance design is evolving to blend more seamlessly into the modern kitchen. Our presenter today is Chris Gregory, Senior Industrial Designer in the Global Brand Design Studio at Whirlpool. He's a contributor to the industrial design and experience brand languages for Whirlpool and KitchenAid major domestic appliances. Chris works alongside designers specializing in color, finish, and material, user experience, and motion graphics. This role requires collaboration with global designers, sales, and business leads as products are translated from the inspiration and concept phases into manufacturing and eventually the retail experience. Chris worked on KitchenAid small appliances, traveling to China and Europe to develop premium toasters, countertop ovens, and multi-cookers for the global market. He also led the most recent launch of KitchenAid built-in ovens, introducing a new visual brand language alongside the accompanying kitchen suite of appliances, as well as Jenn-Air's most recent built-in ovens featuring Wi-Fi connectivity and updated culinary center. Chris received a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Industrial Design with highest honors from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Notable projects included the design of a solar-heated mobile cart for street vendors in India. Chris also spent time using empathic modeling techniques with students from the Division of Disability Resources to design a solution for assisting people with campus navigation. Now, before we get to our webinar, I need to let you know that Whirlpool Corporation is the #1 major appliance manufacturer in the world, with approximately $21 billion in annual sales, 97,000 employees, and 70 manufacturing and technology research centers as of 2015. The company marks Whirlpool, KitchenAid, Maytag, Console, Brastemp, Amana, Bachknecht, Jenn-Air, Indesit, and other major brand names in nearly every country throughout the world. Additional information about the company can be found at Whirlpool Corp, so it's Whirlpool, CORP.com. You can also find them on Twitter at Whirlpool Corp. During the course of today's presentation, you can submit questions for our guest. Simply use the questions box on the right side of your screen. It should be in that go-to platform over there. I'll review those questions and pose them to Chris during the Q&A time that we've set aside after his presentation. Chris, I think we're all set.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for joining today. It's my pleasure to be here to talk to everyone about some of the trends that we're seeing in kitchen design. So just to get started, the frame of mind that I was in as I was putting this together with my design team, really wanted to talk about the way that consumers these days are seeing a lot more about kitchen trends. They have a lot more ideas than they had in the past through different media channels, and that's really merging with this new world of connectivity and software within appliances. So I really want to go through what would it take for designers to basically do in order to create a sustainable advantage. So just a little background from our perspective as a design organization. I work within the Whirlpool Global Consumer Design Department, and we really have a lot of disciplines that all come together within one group to really develop these products, and of course keep the consumer in front of mind. So we've got a global footprint. When we're looking at trends, we scour design blogs and we go to trade fairs, and we really use that information in a unique way to create a perspective on design. And so some of just the tactics that we use to make sure that we're on trend is we really want to know where we stand competitively. So we attend trade shows, we read reports. We really also want to understand perspectives around where the future trends are going. So we look at trend reports and insights, and then all of that information we bring back to the table, and we decide how are we going to bring that to life within our our 5-year vision, 3-year vision, and then of course production work. And so what we're seeing, and this is sort of like a broad overview of our perspective on the modern kitchen, is we're seeing a couple trends here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of briefly go over these on the slide, and then we'll kind of explore these. So one of the big trends, obviously, is the social engagement of the kitchen. Now, it's not really, I guess, news to many people that the kitchen is the hub of the home. But our time is more and more precious these days, and the time that we do have together to sort of eat and prepare food, that's also important because it's a comfortable place and it needs to be comfortable. So the social element is really driving a lot of design elements. Of course, the location with the walls coming down between the kitchen and the dining room, and then the latest trend is the walls coming down between the kitchen and the living room. So we'll see how that is affected in the design of the kitchen. Of course, you're also seeing a connection to as many other spaces within the home. So you're getting that connection both through your open floor plans, but also through technology. So now you can see what's going on in different parts of the home through your smartphone or your smart thermostat without necessarily leaving the kitchen. And so that kind of leads us into this idea of like, what do homeowners value? What matters to them within the home? And where the designers kind of take a differentiated stand is it matters in terms of personalization, having a true visual impact, meaning what is it showing about your sense of style? What is the consumer or the homeowner, what is their perspective on things? What do they want to express to their family and their friends about themselves? So we're seeing a lot more personalization. And so when you think about appliance design, maybe the first thing that comes to mind might not be this idea, but really we try and keep this as top of mind. And that's appliances need to reflect the warmth and the beauty of the heart of the home. And we'll explore what that means, but from broad sense, we want to make sure that they feel integrated and that they really speak to the values of the home as a place to gather. Because we really believe that people take pride in their home, and they want to make it as lovable as possible. So one of the big drivers right now, instead of thinking of products purely from a material point of view or a sort of what do I own, what did I achieve, it's more about what kind of experiences am I able to have within my home. We believe appliances really can provide this intuitive experience, even I think going so far as to say delightful. And even in light of the fact that there's so much more digital technology in the home, you really have to push hard to make sure that you're keeping it delightful across all those touch points, because consumers really now they're expecting that. You also have to think about the shift that's going on. In the old days, I think a lot of kitchen appliances were basically trying to overcome chores within the kitchen, the chore of washing dishes, and it was framed in a very kind of negative light in a way. Today, there's I think a new way to look at that. We really think about creating this emotional journey for the consumer and finding some of the joy within the task. I know myself, when I come home from work, sometimes all I want to do is just step away from the computer, and cooking for me is definitely one of those creative outlets. And so the appliance is not just about getting dinner done necessarily. I mean, it can certainly be about getting your family together around the table, but sometimes it's about, enjoying that time together, learning how to cook, teaching someone how to cook. So we're really trying to reframe that. And this is the idea that's shown here is something we really love to talk about. North American style specifically is under renovation. So there's definitely a shift going on. We'll look at that here in the next couple slides. So it starts with the consumer, of course. What is going on at the consumer level? They're really, they're looking at websites like Pinterest, House, all sorts of different public sites where this is where they're spending sort of their free time or downtime on the weekends. So you're already getting a consumer set that's much more informed about what they like and what they don't like. And we have to think about this as an appliance company because we fit into a context of a home. We don't just, we don't just sell you an appliance that just lives on its own. It has to fit within the context of the home. And so we then have to ask, well, what is going on with the home? And basically what we're seeing is this modern kitchen movement of the last maybe 5 years. So we're still in the major swing of this design movement. And I guess you could quantify that as contemporary design with minimal lines, a little ornamentation as well on the hardware. So cleaner kitchen cabinet fronts, a lot of shaker cabinets, a lot more open shelves for creating a sense of lightness and airiness. And as well as the hardware that you're seeing on cabinets is becoming a little bit more simplified, boiled down to its essence. Here's a nice example of a way that we kind of look at, well, what's on the way out? So the 2000s, the year 2000s of the overused heavy materials, very busy countertops, busy backsplashes, very ornate cabinetry, pulls, and faucetry. I think part of the shift is also just this need for pause and reflection when you are home. So that's where we're seeing a shift into the space of the white and the gray, which we call the new neutrals. So you're seeing that as well as that shaker style cabinet front. And then of course the faucetry that you're seeing is more of a minimal line. Not saying that some styles like modern farmhouse, you're not still getting some old fashioned hardware. It's definitely toned down a lot more. And then of course the big influence from the European styling of some of the sleeker cabinet pulls. And next couple points here are just some data points to think about. So the millennial generation is really it's a big range of ages, but one of the big trends is that there's a desire for personalization. 43% of millennials want their homes to be more customized and less cookie cutter, and I think that makes sense when you think about the housing inventory that a lot of millennials are buying these days. It's typically something from maybe the 50s, 60s, 70s, and they're walking into their newly purchased home, and then they have to think about, well, what am I going to do to make this contemporary? So back in the post-war days, you saw a lot of cookie cutter homes, but really, how do you take that home and turn it into something unique? This data point here also from 2016 showing millennials are making up about 35% of home buyers, and that, of course, that's only continuing to increase over the next few years. So it's something that our company looks at for sure, and thinking about how to remove barriers to offering designs for them that'll resonate. I thought this study was actually very, very useful. We looked at the 2017 House and Home Report, and the way that the information was presented here, I thought really connected to what we were thinking as well, which is showing that 3 in 4 homeowners are changing the style of their kitchen Many of them are adopting transitional or contemporary. So the gray bar is the before style, like when they bought the home, and then after, whatever they choose to renovate. It's really showing you also a slight difference in some of the age groups. So you can see for that modern farmhouse look, boomers are almost half as likely as millennials to go for that look, but both segments are on the increase. And so I think this really shows a couple things. One, you're getting many more styles, not just a modern style anymore, but eclectic styles, farmhouse, the catch-all, the word transitional. I think a lot of people like to ask me, what does transitional mean? Really, the way that we are thinking of it is it's a combination of two styles. So it could be your modern farmhouse, it could be craftsman, plus a little mid-century. So that's great news. That's great news for appliances too, because it allows us to offer a lot more finishes and colors. So a couple themes I want to walk through here. The first one being inspired a lot by, I think, the European kitchen scene, but what we're starting to see trickle down into the mass, hidden appliances. So the more that the home kitchen becomes a gathering place, the more people expect the appliances to really blend in. Unless you're going for that commercial style look where you really want to make a statement about commercial equipment or commercial inspired equipment, this really is the direction on the other end of the scale. And we as a company are working hard to figure out how to provide more of these experiences, whether or not it's freestanding appliances or built-in. Of course, the second big trend is the ambient home. So the more that technology is embedding itself into every single little touch point within our homes, we want to make sure that we're not doing it for just the sake of technology, just because it's cool, and to make sure that it's not cold and off-putting. So we think of things like the ambient home. How do things connect to each other without you necessarily knowing that they're there, unless you want to. So really about integrating this technology within your home space. And then, as I mentioned before, and I think this picture does a really nice job of showing that, which is this new family room. More and more you're seeing the incorporation of the dining room and living room into the kitchen. So I think that there is a progression there. You used to see only the dining room in the kitchen, and now you're seeing the wall between the kitchen and the living room coming down, and that is opening up the space even more. And so you're seeing things like banquette seating. It's basically like a bench or a booth type seating, people gathering around to do homework and things. So, some of the key results of that within the appliance space are things like pocket handles or more muted finishes and matte finishes as well. I really liked the way this was put. This was in the House survey as well. I liked what this person said. The modern super kitchen supports family, friends, and work, and it does it in style. And that's really, really true as you think of what kitchens are for. Sometimes they're for homework, sometimes they're for eating, but it really challenged us to define where the kitchen ends and where the rest of the home begins, and to understand how those different color finishes and materials come into the kitchen. And I encourage everyone who's listening to think of that question: how can I take materials from other parts of the home and integrate them into the kitchen in unexpected ways? For example, here's a nice floor plan showing an even bigger expansion. So not only is this kitchen very nicely integrated into the living room space, you're seeing the wooden bar stools and the marble countertops tied in with the metal accents on the shelves, but you're also seeing a tie-in to that sort of the transitional space leading to the outdoors. This kitchen is probably, or this home is probably in somewhere that at least part of the year you're getting that outdoor living, which a lot of millennials are also very interested in achieving. So you can see there that the wall is open to the window wall and the outside living space. And I think the takeaway for builders and anyone who's planning a home is no matter what size footprint the home is, there is a way to make this open plan work. So don't assume that just because you're building a very large home for 4 or more people versus maybe 2 people that you can't achieve this. It really is possible to have that hub space at the home center. Finally, I think one of the interesting ways that we're beginning to see boundaries blur between cabinetry and appliances is this idea of smart capacity. So they basically integrating cabinetry style hinges and drawer actions into our appliances eventually, so that you're not changing the experience of a consumer from the way they normally interact with their kitchen cabinets to when they interact with, say, an oven or a refrigerator. The more that experience can be made consistent across those different touch points is really important. So what I want to do now is I just want to quickly run through an example about a product that we've been working on that affects multiple brands within our portfolio, but it kind of does illustrate all these things I've been talking about for the last 15 minutes. So when you think about refrigerators, you normally think of this big steel box. It's something that takes up a lot of space in your home. It's a big purchase for any family. So there's a lot of emotion that goes around that. But also just from a very practical standpoint, the refrigerator is open probably more than 50 times a day for the average family of 5. So 50 times you're coming into contact with this piece of furniture per se. And the old way of looking at this would have been much more like a cooling machine, playing up these benefits around what is it doing from a very functional standpoint, technical standpoint. And of course, yes, it definitely needs to keep the food cold. And but what's the next frontier of design? I mean, what are we going to do to change that? And one of the big themes that we like to talk about as we shift our perspective on appliance design is more like a cold pantry. So what you're seeing here is a beautiful illustration that someone on our design team did to set the mood for, how can you take this idea of the inspirational pantry that you would find on Pinterest and apply it, as well as, of course, thinking about ways that consumers shop for food. So when you go to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, you really see this beautiful presentation of produce and food. And we were inspired by this, and we wanted to understand how can you increase this emotional appeal around the experience of the food presentation. Because at the end of the day, we think it's really less about the appliance and more about the food, bringing those ingredients to top of mind so that you're really ready to go no matter what type of meal you're creating. And so, of course, we look at adjacent trends within the kitchen. So organization of, open shelves and closets and ways that people are curating the objects in their kitchen. So one of the really nice ways that this came to life within our design studio and eventually into a product was we thought, well, let's push this idea as far as we can. And we said, what if we were to look at a dark canvas, sort of like the Dutch masters, the paintings? What happens when you put food against this really interesting background? And what we came out with was this idea of the obsidian interior for refrigerator, which is currently exclusive to Jenner. And as soon as we mocked this up, everyone was pretty interested in the idea, and we knew that we had hit on something really strong. So a simple change of the color of our product on the inside really made things pop, and it really changed the whole mindset around the food presentation. We even had a little bit of fun about how would your behavior change if you thought of your refrigerator more as a jewelry box versus just a cold storage place. So we just had a little bit of fun with that. And really, if you compare the two, the left side here, you're seeing the before stage, and then on the right side, you're seeing what we got on one of our refrigerators. This is a freestanding French door bottom mount. But you're really getting this really interesting presentation of your ingredients so that you're just as inspired when you open the fridge as you are in the rest of your kitchen. So pivoting here to another trend which affected our products, we really noticed that natural materials are becoming much more, predominant within the home because, white kitchens are still probably the highest percentage spec within the home, within kitchens. That can become cold if you don't do something to warm it up. So wood is really an important part of that equation. And so we did the exact same thing. We looked at the interior of one of our KitchenAid refrigerators, and it was really kind of cold and maybe uninspiring. It was good, but it was very plain. So what we did is we took a look at injecting a silver color into our product, and of course we also added the wood accents and the pull-out tray, and that really ended up making a big impact. You can see here, you're getting this cabinet-inspired material on the inside of your refrigerator. So there really isn't this complete break in consistency between your kitchen and your appliance. And it does tie in your visual experience from storage to cooking to prep to serving process. It just makes that consistent across the cooking experience. So the more you can stay within your zone as you're cooking and enjoy that, the better, basically. And just here's a couple of fun photos and comments from some of the people that have enjoyed looking at our products and using them. But this to us proves the point that some people may say that putting your curating your life or curating your home is a little bit of maybe exclusive or fussy, but you really don't have to think of it that way. It can all come down to just organization, having an appliance that inspires you to put things away in different spots, keep things looking fresh, keep things front of mind so they don't go bad, they're not hidden in the back, and really have a sense of pride, I think, which is a word that maybe you don't always hear with appliances. So again, turning things into a work of art. This is not something that I think is unachievable. I believe this is something that really anyone can achieve if they want to create that experience within their home. So you can see on the left here sort of that farmer's market, and then on the right, that experience is triggered in the refrigerator. So I talked a little bit about how we look at the integration of colors and finishes on the inside, but now I want to pivot and I want to talk about the way that we worked to create some of the new finishes on the exterior of our products. And maybe this will inspire some of you to think about ways that you can introduce new materials. So we studied kitchen cabinets, and we really had this insight that most cabinets are either mid-tone woods or painted finishes in a satin or a semi-gloss finish. And we really wanted to take this into consideration as we looked at appliance finishes to make sure that we had this integrated look. And that's really where black stainless came into the picture for us. And a couple important things to note is it is a matte finish stainless. So you're getting a lot of the undertones from the stainless color, but you're getting a matte application on the top. So, you know, there's a practical benefit. You're not getting as many fingerprints, but you're also getting a new option for consumers instead of just white, black, and stainless. So that warm undertone is really important. And now this finish is appearing on multiple products within multiple brands. So you're seeing this all over the market. It's become mass. So I'm interested to see ways that we're going to be inspired by other finishes within the kitchen, and how that might affect the kitchen appliances. So again, what are some of those elements in the home that you could connect? So what we're seeing a lot of is texture. So I think texture is sort of that next frontier within the home space. Texture can be graphic, it could be printed, it can be the texture of a material like steel. It could be a lot of different things, but as long as I think that you're thinking about these elements, these non-obvious elements within the home, like pillows and you know, window coverings and things like that, rugs, there's always a way to draw that back into your overall palette. So when I said before, we used to only have 3 colors, now you're seeing a much wider range within the home appliance space, with warm metals, new bronze finishes on stainless, and of course you're also seeing a lot more of the hardware coordinating with those finishes on cabinets. So maybe a little bit more understated, but still very beautiful. And of course, like I said, integration of things like pocket handles. The more that we see appliances becoming part of the living space, the more we want them to be integrated. And this is a sunset bronze finish on a pocket handle dishwasher, and you can see it's very subtle, but it gives just enough warmth to keep the kitchen a really comfortable place. So I would like to conclude here, and then we can take some questions. But to kind of summarize, from our perspective as appliance designers, but also very much in tune with consumers' desires within the home, you know, we really believe that to build products that people love, we really want to give people something to love. We have to design something that they're going to love. So finding the moments of joy and inspiration within the kitchen and the cooking experience. We're not just there to solve, you know, technical problems for them or technical solutions. We really want to integrate that whole picture into the home, find those moments of delight. So I would encourage everyone listening, anyone who has any kind of stake in design or building, to really think about creating desire within their appliance or their home design. And I think that is really a sustainable advantage. And people keep things that they love a lot more. And things that are designed to fit within the home, they end up becoming more timeless, classic pieces. So really, that's the end of my talk. I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Most certainly, yeah. Let's have our audience send in questions. I know I've got a couple questions. Douglas does too. So I want to get to one of Douglas's questions now, if I can, Chris. He wants to know, what is the process to test new products and ideas? Because there's the kind of the aesthetic, you know, the appearance of it all, but then there's also the functional side of things.
So what's the process to testing the appearance and the functional, or?
I don't think so much the appearance. I mean, he's certainly acknowledging that the appearance of it, the aesthetic of it has to look very nice and fantastic, but also the function of it himself. He cited an example of he had a coffee pot that leaked all over his countertop when he tried to fill a cup. So
Uh-huh.
He's like, I don't know if this glass spout was ever tested. So can you
Yeah,
talk a little
yeah.
bit to
So
some of that?
sure. Well, absolutely. First, I'll just start within the design function. We've got usability researchers and usability specialists who have backgrounds in human factors. And of course, no design is finished until we go through that process of testing standards. So, we use standard measurements of appliance and human factors. So things like pocket handles and other handles, and even coffee pots. Yeah, we definitely run tests. We do rapid prototyping to make sure that we've designed the spout in the optimal way. I know that for a fact that we've done that. KitchenAid products have uh, been tested to make sure that we've got the ideal pouring experience. So, there's better and worse ways to, for example, like you said, the coffee pot, to do that. So we do put effort into testing those things with rapid prototyping. Um, Set-based design. Basically, we look at many options and then we converge on the option that ends up working the best. So, but then there's a lot of products in the market right now in existing ones. So we do this a lot every year because we launch so many different products. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Okay, cool. I've got a question for you. I've got a handful of them. I'll kind of mix them in as we go here. But kitchen styles, they go in cycles. So from a
Yeah.
design standpoint, how does a manufacturer know when to start making that switch of colors? Because it's not a simple decision to say, oh, we'll just start making white appliances or stainless steel or whatever. Like, how do they know when to make that switch?
Well, there's a lot of things that come into play. I think any new style or any new color or finish that's ever come out on an appliance has been a bit of a surprise to consumers, which is not surprising to think about because they don't spend their time designing or thinking about appliances. They just see what launches. So we don't we try and think about what finishes consumers will be ready to accept in their current kitchens. If, for example, they're not going to buy a full suite of something, a lot of our new finishes are still very much able to be mixed in. So black stainless, for example, you can mix a black stainless refrigerator with a stainless steel suite. And for example, sometimes the island in an open kitchen is one type of cabinetry, like a darker finish. So maybe you'd put a dark stainless dishwasher in the island, but then the rest of the kitchen is white, and then you'd use maybe whiter stainless. So we acknowledge that people buy products at different times, and they are just looking for options. So I guess one answer to that is we launch things that we know will complement what's on the market and what kind of kitchens are being built. But we also look at the trends about what is happening with cabinet design and hardware within faucetry. We have a lot of design partnerships with other companies that produce fixtures for the home. And what we often do is we have a very good idea of what we think will be successful. And then when we talk to our partners and we hear them saying similar things, it just reinforces the fact that, yes, that's probably the right time, the right finish. So we put a lot of thought into it, but at the end of the day, you got to move a lot of people to rally behind your decision because it takes a lot of factories and a lot of different moving parts. So once we make that change and that offering, we're usually pretty sure that it's going to be big. So
Right. Yeah. No, I know. It's a huge decision. It's not just as simple as saying, "Okay, we'll switch." So, appreciate that insight. It's a Green Builder Media platform here, so you knew we were going to get into the topic of sustainability. So, our audience never lets us down on that. So, I want to start getting into some of the sustainability aspects of this. And so, we've got a question from Stephanie. She wants to know if you can elaborate on the organization and the presentation of the food, both in the fridge and the kitchen, and how can that relate to reducing food waste?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you kind of set me up there for for an answer, but I I would I would definitely see things in that light. I will tell you, when we went through the process of looking at how to design a large capacity refrigerator, one of the things we needed to do was to ensure that we weren't hiding more food. Food waste is a very big concern in general, right? And so, it's the age of the bulk shopper, and you come home with all of these groceries, but then you forget that you bought something. So what we ended up looking at was testing lots of design concepts around shelving. And one of our products, we ended up with this panoramic balcony system. So the idea is easy access to food no matter where it is in the refrigerator. So if you're able to create sliding shelves and line of sight to food that typically gets pushed back into the corners, you're more likely to use it up. But on the other hand, there's also this very emotional side, which is if you don't get an uneasy feeling when you open your refrigerator, like if you open it and you say, that's actually pretty refreshing, pretty cool to see, it's going to inspire you to want to do that more in a positive light. Produce, if you buy a lot of fresh produce, I know it can be easy to forget about things if they're underneath drawers and kind of tucked away in the back. But bringing that to life through the color that we put in there, I think, personally, that helps you want to cook more with those foods. So absolutely, I definitely think it's not just emotional; it's very practical.
I want to latch on to one of the words you just used, which was color,
Mm-hmm.
because Douglas he's got a question about refrigerators, and he's noticed that a lot of them have LED lighting that is just, in his
Yeah.
opinion,
Mm-hmm.
too bright. It's the wrong Kelvin temperature, and so he's asking if Whirlpool considers things like color temperature or brightness in their refrigerator lighting.
Yes, that's something we've studied. When we look at lighting, temperature, there's a lot of things to weigh when you're making a decision. One important thing is you don't want it to look too warm, because then it has this sort of, there's like a mental disconnect between, this is supposed to be a cold space, but it looks hot. So there is a balance, a neutral space in which we believe is the ideal temperature. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I think it's always there is a journey to getting there from where you start. I know a lot of refrigerators, when LED lights started appearing on the market, everything was very cold looking, kind of bluish. And I would say most kitchens, if you're trying to create a nice atmosphere, you're going to stay away from overly cold tints within the lighting space. So I don't know if I can make any general statements about any specific brand within the groupings of Whirlpool's brands, but I would say that the more we want to fit in with the home, the more we want to create something that's just neutral. Like how can we make it maybe not noticeable, but still bright? I know I'm kind of being vague, but we do think about it, and we have to study it, and we have to make sure that we're striking that right balance between too warm and too cold. So hopefully, as LED becomes more common, that companies that make those parts will understand this idea too, and it'll be even more easy for us to put those into our products.
I want to stay with the light topic for just a moment. In testing the obsidian interior, you showed off how you've gone to the obsidian interior on the Gen Air. Did you find that that refrigerator, or that type of interior in that model, needed more light to be able to illuminate the contents?
There is there is like a minimum amount of light that you need in a dark color. Uh, I don't know all the details around like did we add more light positions? I don't know the answer to that, but we might have adjusted the intensity of some of the lights. Um, I don't have an answer. I'm sorry, but that we make sure that if we're gonna put a darker color inside a refrigerator, you have to have adequate illumination um, to achieve to achieve illumination, I guess. So yeah, we do look at that, but technically, I don't know all the details around what we did to make it work.
Okay, that's fine. I kind of figured,
Yeah,
the old saying, the black keep light.
I just think of something, which is our shelves. We have a system of shelving on some products which had under-shelf lighting, which is something that really did help the situation once that became a reality. So the ladder shelf, the shelf in the middle of the refrigerator that you can kind of adjust, that has lights in it to illuminate the ingredients directly below. So I guess you could say there's direct lighting and indirect lighting. So there's sort of this ambient, what is the side lighting, and then what is it that's showing on the actual food. So we often have to put lights in places that you may not even see unless you're kind of looking from the inside of the refrigerator.
Gotcha.
But that's the goal, is that you don't notice. It shouldn't be something that's sort of too noticeable.
Okay. I'm going to kind of move to a different aspect of sustainability.
Okay.
You featured a really nice island in one of your slides, and you talked about how the kitchen, the family room, the kitchen, the dining room, they're all kind of starting to blend together.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about islands for a minute. When you have a cooktop located on it, how do you properly vent those while still trying to maintain a clean aesthetic? Or is that just an impossible task?
It's not impossible. There are different architectures. There's downdraft venting, and that's very low profile, very integrated. So it's basically a device that sits behind the cooktop, and sometimes they elevate and go back down. They're motorized. Sometimes they're always there, but those can vent, cooking vents, and sometimes those are even integrated into the cooktop. So they come as part of the full install of the cooktop. And then the venting for that goes down into a filter, and it can come back out or recirculate or go into an exhaust to the outside of the house. Of course, the other way is the ceiling mounted hood, the island mount hood. So 360 degrees exposure of all sides, but then it's basically a stainless steel canopy with a chimney, different power levels and lighting. So if you need lighting over your cooktop, sometimes that's a good way to go, because it's built in to the hood. And of course, the colors that are offered on the hood coordinate, like we've got black stainless and stainless hoods as well. So really depends on your style. If you want a pot rack above your cooktop or something else, you might want to go with the downdraft instead of a hood.
Okay. I'll put out the final call for questions from our audience. I do have one more for you, Chris. Getting away from the sustainability topic for just a moment. You talked about the hidden appliance trend. Is there any way that meshes with the interactivity of appliances? And I guess I've got this idea in my head here of the touch screen that's on the front of the appliance, the fridge, I'll say. Okay, I can leave a note for somebody, or I can make a shopping list or whatever. But is there a way to mesh those two? I mean, where maybe it's, you tap on it on the screen and then it shows up, but otherwise it looks as if it's a hidden appliance?
So maybe what I'm hearing you say is like hidden interfaces that are gone when you don't want them and there when you do?
Yeah, and I mean, I am certainly
Hmm.
no kitchen design expert by any means. So something like this may already exist, and I'm just not aware of it. But you've got those kind of two things I see. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously you talked about hidden appliance trend, and then you also see the interactivity of the appliances too, both smart grid
Yeah,
and also just interactivity with the human. And I didn't know if those two
yeah,
can coexist.
absolutely. I mean, a couple of ways to think about it. One, if you're just thinking about interfaces, one of the things that we're doing is trying to keep a consistent experience across our interfaces across the kitchen suite. So that if there is a interactive screen on a refrigerator, the experience on that interface, the touch, the interface layout, the amount of keys is the same family as what you see maybe on a cooktop or a freestanding range. And in that sense, you're taking the power of technology, you're condensing controls into a much more simplified experience instead of this sort of like dashboard of keys, like like a spaceship control panel, and so you're seeing that happen. This consolidation into a screen, just like your smartphone. And as long as it's consistent across appliances, you begin to forget that you're dealing with different appliances that aren't connected. You get this feeling that they're all part of a system. So that's one way that I see it. The other way is maybe you have no screen at all on the appliance, and you really have only what you need to work things, and the rest of the functionality is on your phone. Uh, for example, if you have a panel-ready refrigerator or dishwasher, and and you're even putting on a custom cabinetry handle on those products to match the rest of your kitchen, sometimes you may still be able to get the ability to control temperature, starting and stopping, different functionality on your phone. So it's all part of the same ecosystem, and yet you would never know that that panel was a fridge. We're seeing a lot of that too, like refrigeration units that are completely camouflaged within the home kitchen. But then you open your smartphone and you can put your fridge on extra cold mode while you're still at the store. So I think I'm sort of answering what your question was, but the interaction of appliances is probably, the way I see it, pretty inevitable. I think one thing I'm waiting to see is what kind of common language is the industry going to adopt as we see all these appliances come into the home? Are they going to be consistent? I mean, are they going to speak similar languages? How are things like smart thermostats going to talk? Things like that. So I'm optimistic about it. I think it's definitely the way that things are going. I'm just curious to see exactly how it pans out, and yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that common language phrase? I mean, are you talking about
Hmm.
programming language, or is this something different?
I'm thinking about from a consumer perspective. So common language of interacting. So how do I tell my product to preheat? If I'm using verbal commands, like turn on the oven to 400 for 30 minutes. I mean, that's pretty universal. So my hope is that everyone is moving towards something like that, because it's not about the appliance, it's about the human, really. In terms of the coding, I mean, that's something that's really invisible to the consumer, or at least it should be. So, and I don't know as much about that. But when I think of the partnerships with companies, thermostats with appliances, smart grids, and things like that, you're already seeing a common interface language. Like, how are they getting onto your Wi-Fi, and how are they talking to each other? I think as long as it happens, consumers will be happy. So
I gotcha. Okay, so it's more about the voice commands from the human rather, turn on the oven as
I think
opposed to
so.
activate oven.
or maybe the ability to just do it the way that you do it, and like it still works. However you want to talk. I mean, I don't know how it would be if we all had to learn exact phrasing. So I think
Right.
as natural and as human as possible. That goes across the whole spectrum: interface, human design, aesthetics, human finishes, things that feel warm and inviting.
Is there a relatively common language that's already utilized on the buttons? And I'll use
Hmm.
the microwave as an example. I think most microwaves, I would hope at least, have a button that says preheat or cook or
Hmm.
set clock, or at least as a symbol of a clock, light,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So if there's already a common language there, I would think that would carry over into the verbal realm.
Yeah, a lot of the common functions, they carry over. Uh, when you look at the most commonly used things, the way that we see it is when you're moving towards a screen, things like the light, the timer, stop and start, and then sort of main menu or main modes, cooking modes. Um, we really want to prioritize that so that it's more like one question at a time. Like, what if I'm going to cook something? Just walk me through it in a way. So I think the language part of it will be a non-issue because we're dealing with very sophisticated technology. Like your phone and your smart devices are capable of storing an enormous library of commands. I don't think there really is a practical limit to those things. So we'll have to see how fast will we get there. But I know for a fact right now, I mean, you can do quite a bit already. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions, so I want to thank Chris for sharing his time and knowledge with us today. Chris, any final words?
nothing from me, but I really appreciate the opportunity to do this, and I hope maybe if there's one thing that people took away from this is that there really is a chance to put some love and emotion into the kitchen with the appliance, and to think differently about how to design the appliance into the kitchen. So I thank everyone for this chance, and I'll see you next time.
Great. Thank you also to our audience for attending and asking the questions that they did today. I really appreciate that. And finally, I want to thank Whirlpool for their sponsorship of today's webinar. We'll see you all back here in 2 weeks. We'll be joined by Walter Kukulik of Avana Capital, and we're going to be discussing financing options for commercial energy efficiency projects. So if you feel the need, bring your calculator, your spreadsheet, or even an abacus. That webinar will be sponsored by PowerShift by NV Energy. Until then, so long for just a while. Take care.